Hi, my name is Daniel, and I'm running to be your representative for House District 22 in the state of Colorado. And these conversations are conversations with different community leaders and stakeholders, and it's because we want government and the process to look just the way it should, talking directly with leaders in our community and stakeholders on issues. I think it's really bad when elected officials, we surprise people with great ideas that we singularly came up with instead of talking with stakeholders and coming up with this stuff together. We're sitting in the beautiful co-working space of Co-Harbor, beautiful small business in Colorado Springs, and we're talking with Mike Regennitter, a good friend, also the owner of Colorado Springs Magazine. And I'm excited about this conversation because you are a community leader in a few different ways. Not only as owner of Colorado Springs Magazine, you do a lot with the medical community with the Top Docs program every year, celebrating the best doctors in our community, voted by other doctors and physicians. And you're a grandfather, which I think when you think about leadership and families, dude. So we could go in a few different directions, but I kind of want to just start with small business first. You've started businesses,
Yes.
built businesses,
Yes.
sold businesses. You're Mr. Business.
Yes.
What is it that, from the business perspective, is that government needs to pay attention to? And this could be, what does government need to get out of the way of? What does government need to support? Because both of us have seen the power of small businesses to impact communities.
Yeah. I would say one of the biggest things when it comes to small business is just really allowing the businesses to be successful. I get it. We have to have regulations and we got to make sure things are in place to protect the consumers, but also to protect the businesses and everybody else. But there's so many different hands that seem to be dipping into the pockets, right? To be able to support whatever programs are going on locally or nationally, which is good. But it comes down to really getting out of the way to be able that we can maximize the profits. Listen, inflation right now is just crazy, and although I'm trying not to raise my prices, everybody else is, and so therefore, how do you control that really? And
well, and that's where I wanted to have these conversations, because you realize really fast that when you talk to the other side of the counter, you realize, oh, everyone is being impacted by inflation. And it's probably going to take all of us to figure it out,
Yes.
how to turn it around a bit.
Yes, it's going to take everybody to figure that out. Is it always about growing wages? What is the real solution? Because the only thing, everything grows, but at some point, something's going to burst in the middle of anywhere else. It's just the way it is, right?
Yeah.
It's just a reset. But when it comes down to how can we come together as a community to support, more people are struggling. I look at my granddaughter and the future of that. I look at when we were raising our kids here when they're little ones in Colorado Springs, and we couldn't afford at that time, even just general care for our kids, daycare, right? So we decided to open up a daycare, right?
Oh wow!
So
I didn't even know that.
That was my wife.
You had a daycare?
Well, my wife had
Wow.
a daycare, so we opened up the daycare so my wife could still be around our kids, but we can also make a positive impact and help make it affordable to other families who are struggling with the same thing. That was 15, 20 years ago. Today, you're not talking about just one person's wage going to daycare. You're talking about, you just can't afford it.
And when another conversation we had with an educator, the reality is that there are people that are making hard decisions whether to go to work or stay at home. And some of those professions, we need teacher retention.
Yes.
And so if we're losing teachers because they have to make that tough decision, I can't believe you open up a daycare. That is, we've been friends for a while.
That's a long time ago.
Wow.
A long time
but
ago.
you think about that, imagine telling a 2-income household,
Yes.
and they're a young family, and they're beginning family planning, and it's like, well, the cost of daycare, it's like, well, don't worry, what we did 20 years ago, we opened up a daycare. You guys can open up a daycare too.
Yeah.
Like there's a
solution to it, but opening up a daycare today is still a lot more challenging than it was 20 years ago.
It's interesting, that conversation, because there's been a really good push of conversation in Colorado Springs. I know, I believe Joint Family Initiative, Pikes Peak United Way, and the Chamber of Commerce recently did a summit on early childhood education, but that the economic impact of not having enough affordable daycare options is huge.
Oh, it's gigantic. And The reality of it is that you got to find a way to make it affordable. I mean, the business side of it, I get that, but some of these daycares, and I'm trying to be positive here, but they're chains, right? They're franchises or they're chains. They're not really part of the local community. And with our daycare, we wanted to make sure we were part of the local community, but even in our neighborhood, right? So we would be able to celebrate that and be able to support each other, and we were able to make it work, and just being able to rally together behind it all.
Now, and I'm going to shift a bit because I know it's like you're such a resource. Being the head of Colorado Springs Magazine, you get to see stories from across our community, get to see multiple industries. Medical.
Yeah.
Colorado Springs Magazine is an incredible sponsor and supporter of the Top Docs Awards. So it's the best physicians on our community. What are you hearing from physicians?
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes, we look at healthcare as this kind of large monolith, but the reality is that there's real human beings.
Yes.
And they are diverse as any other group of people. Yes. What do you hear from the physician community and what they're experiencing or their role right now in society as inflation and economics continues to change?
Well, there's so much tied to just healthcare, but when you look at our local community and you look at the physicians, it's a privilege to be able to be with these guys and to work with them, and to be able to have them lift each other up and celebrate who's the best in the Springs, and that's tough to say you're one of the best because there's so many great physicians that don't make the list. But the challenges that they're facing right now is obviously workforce. They're just struggling to get people to come in, physicians, all the way down to admin support for workforce. They're so limited and strapped. Plus the cost of healthcare and workforce is going up, so they're struggling there. Then on the flip side of it, you have legislation issues that are giving them pressures. Right? Let's talk about insurance. Right? They are filing more claims, but they're getting paid less by the insurance companies, right? So when you're going in there and you're paying your hefty fees for insurance, they're getting less too. You're paying more, they're getting less. So it's not evenly across the board.
Right. Well, and this is why these conversations are important, because the assumption of like, oh, they're physicians, they must be making this amount, but the reality is that economics is changing for everyone.
Everyone.
And that, I've been very fortunate to have physicians that, how they've structured their businesses or their practice, like, they have that time to sit down with you. But some physicians are, balancing the insurance requests, and there's that 5-minute quick window, and like, okay, you good, okay, and that. The pace of that is intense.
The pace is intense. There's a really good friend of mine. He is a dermatologist in town. Him and his wife have done a really good job of how they set up their practice. And it's really about culture and community and how they support their staff and all that. Then it goes and pours out to the community. But they still deal with hours and time and family time to protect all that stuff too. And they got to run a practice, right? And they have multiple locations, so it's multiple practices. But what they deal with is really time restrictive. I mean, you look at some of them, they do get paid well. They deserve to get paid well.
Oh, yeah.
They've been to school
the
for...
student loans that they have, I'm okay with the doctor being well.
They deserve it. But the reality of it is that they are... the medical community is the highest burnout right now. Doctors are just consumed because of red tape or processes or whatever. And the independent practices are struggling to stay afloat too, because the bigger conglomerates want to buy them out, right? And when they buy them out, what happens is then you lose your healthcare, your options for various healthcare providers, right? Because they only will refer within their network.
Right.
Right.
But and then insurance companies are like, well, I don't want to work with your medical group, and that is painful for consumers.
It's more of that, or you're not getting the best care because they're inside their network. And that's really going against the independents, because they're the ones that have a lot of really good providers out there, but because they're not within a certain network, they won't be referred.
It's something, and this is, thank you for your time and this conversation, because I know you would bring a unique avenue to this where, we think about small businesses, and you've been a small business owner, but sometimes you don't realize that healthcare, some of these physicians are operating also as small business owners, running a staff, running admin and billing, and on top of what we expect them to do as their main profession, which is provide excellent medical care, but all of a sudden it's excellent medical care and running a small business.
Correct.
And that it's a unique dynamic that we mostly don't always think about when it comes to that. Well, and this is why I wanted to invite you into this conversation, Mike, because even this conversation on healthcare, you're a small business owner, but we often don't think about our physicians, that some of them are in the position not only of doing what we expect them to do, which is provide excellent medical care, but now they're also small business owners, bookkeepers, billing experts, insurance law experts, and that impact of having 7 different hats on burnout, on, and I'm going to go a step further. When we look at first responders, educators, our medical community, I think we need to have and I know Colorado Springs has been leading this charge of human stories in Colorado Springs and what that really means to tell the full picture. But a lot of these positions that we absolutely need in our society, they are burning out because we expect them to have 5 different hats. And that's just not reasonable.
Let's take this perspective. In 2020 is when I really started this Colorado Springs magazine. And at that time, right, COVID, and was this stupid or not? And I'm also not only digital, but we're also going into print because we believe print is still a solid vehicle. But at the end of the day, what we wanted to do is humanize our city, right? And that goes into the medical community. We have to humanize our physicians. When we go there, we're expecting one thing, right? We want to make sure that we're still in good health. If we have an issue, we want that resolved to the best capability we can. And the physicians, some are really good about providing that care with the balance of even having a little bit of respect and empathy for the patients. But there's a boundary there, right? They go too far with some of their care, that could get them in trouble. But they just got to stick to the
Well, and it's something
process.
that I want to put some specifics to, because health insurance companies, and let's take something from like mental health insurance and payouts. The way some of that unfortunately occurs. My mom's a licensed therapist. Someone gets classified, they have depression. Well, the insurance will pay out 8 to 10 sessions, no more, to tackle depression.
Not only that, you got to label how many different ways just so the insurance company can categorize that, but you're not really addressing a real issue.
But those are the things, is that, like, depending on the degree of care, we in our society, we have this deep appreciation, gratitude for physicians that they take the extra time, they order the extra tests, they go the extra mile to make sure they get that diagnosis right. And they, behind the scenes, are fighting against systems that say, hey, do they need the extra test? And that tension, and they're trying to provide best of care. I mean, I think we find this at teachers. The best teachers we know about are the teachers who go the extra mile, but they're going the extra mile against a system. Where there's not enough time in the day. Our police officers, I really do believe that our first responders and our public safety officers, they're doing an amazing job, but also we expect them to be social workers. We expect them to be law enforcement, traffic. I mean, this burnout epidemic, we're in a time where it's like, we need more of this. We need this conversation. We need your magazine that humanizes people. It goes like, maybe.
Well, who are the people behind it, right? And when you get to learn about a physician, we were able to do a project with one of our clients, and he's a doctor, and he changed this life for this young skater. And when they get to come and just tell why they get to do what they do, they come to tears.
Wow.
They're human. What they do, they have passion. What they want to do is help. They want to heal, and they want to do that. But what happens is that we get bogged down by all this other stuff, right? The time limitations, the bureaucracy, the red tape, the legislation issues that they got to deal with all the time. And what's in the best interest of the patient gets lost. And the physicians are struggling to keep that at the top of their radar. They're doing a great job, but if they get pulled down, how do they stay sane? And then you go to the other conversation with medical professions, is their mental health. But being the #1 profession with suicide rates, what can they do to take care of themselves? They're struggling. Where do they go? they go somewhere and next thing you know, they have the threat of losing their license, even though they just need somebody to talk to.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest piece missing, I think, within our community.
Mike, I wanted to, because thank you for your time. Thank you for providing a different perspective on this, because you provide the perspective of someone who is actively looking for the humanity in profession and in our community, and then telling those stories. As someone you've been in Colorado for a long time, you're a grandparent, you're a small business owner here, what is the way that elected officials, our community leaders, what's the way we can do better on the humanity side, that we can honor our community, honor the individuals, and honor, honestly, grandparents and leaders like yourself, that this is what I think we should be fighting for. This is the community.
Well, the biggest thing is community. And all the things that I think can really support the challenges that we're facing, it has to be a community-driven. It's got to come from the community. It can't come from the elected officials who have their platform, but make sure they follow through with their platform by bringing in the community to help solve the problems, versus, hey, this is the laws we need to bring in because this is X, Y, and Z is happening. And to hear all perspectives. We don't all get along politically. We all have different views and viewpoints, but there's one thing that we do have in common, and that we want to make sure people are healthy and humanity, and respect the people that are around us. And some people take advantage of that. So be it. And how do we come together as leaders and business owners and parents and teachers to not get ground to the ground through all the complaining and the challenges, and how can we come together to solve the problem? And that's a big challenge. I get it. It takes energy, but it's not up to your teachers. They can't solve the problem for your child. They're to educate them. Back in the day, my kids were raised by teachers, right? They're raised by teachers, coaches, myself, our church, and I don't know if that's still there today. I can't tell you that, but I could tell you my granddaughters, they're trying to figure out what their steps are going to be for education.
Yeah,
right?
Well, and I could tell where the passion for the magazine comes from in these stories, because this idea that, the best thing government can sometimes do is say, how do we support what's being community-led? How do we collaborate? Because we do live in a culture where it's easy to be cynical, it's easy to be disengaged or jaded, but to take that courageous step to be engaged with each other and to look for how we can work together, that makes the difference.
Being open-minded, radically open-minded and radically transparent.
Mike, thank you so much. Seriously, this has been, and this is the stuff I think, I love Pikes Peak. I love the mountains. I really, and I know this is going to sound cheesy, but I really believe this, is that the people of our community, that's what makes this community special. And I know that's the heart of the magazine. I know that's what you guys care about, that, it's more than just, we get a great view at the nighttime and at the sunrise. It's about the people and the leaders in the community. Thank you for being a part of this conversation. DanielForColorado.com. There's not a lot of Daniels that run for office, apparently, so we have the domain DanielForColorado.com, and we'd love for you to go to the website, engage, see the other videos. We have conversation with an educator, conversation with a first responder, conversations with a small business owner, and we really want this to be the tone of how we do government. Mike, thank you so much again, dude.
Daniel, thank you.
And thank you, and definitely vote in November.